I wanted to do a bit of a dive into what the different legislation, what the different bills that are being proposed mean, and explain them so that everybody understands what we're looking at. Basically, we're looking at three bills, three major bills, plus their companion bills, and that would be House Bill 481, Senate Bill 594, and Senate Bill 164. Now, basically, if you love cruising, if you live aboard, or even if you're just a Florida boater who's doing an occasional weekend at anchor, the bills can seriously impact what you want to do and your enjoyment of the water. So, okay, let's get into what's at stake and the reasons that we're acting now to protect everybody's rights in the water. Florida, of course, has forever been a boater's paradise. It's got warm weather, it's got great anchorages, it's got an excellent marine economy. I mean, if there's something you need done in your boat and you can't get it done in Florida, it probably means you can't get it done at all. The problem is that a number of very, very powerful land-based interests, wealthy waterfront homeowners, local governments like Miami Beach, have been pushing strongly to the legislature for tighter anchoring restrictions. What these three bills will do in the broad picture, they'll drastically limit how long you can anchor in any one space in Florida. They're going to and this is the worst of all of them, it's going to hand power back to local governments to set their own anchoring rules. And I'll come back to that strongly in a few minutes. It will also expand no anchoring zones around the key Florida ports. Now, these bills, according to their sponsors, and they're sponsors of the three first bills that come up, are Anna Rodriguez, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about her in a minute, and also Vicky Lopez, who are both Miami and Miami Beach area senators. Or one's a senator, sorry, one's a House representative. But the bills claim to be about solving the derelict vessel problem, but don't get this wrong. They will make life much harder for responsible boaters and responsible cruisers. So let's go with each bill, and we're going to break down what it actually means. House Bill 481 is basically the 30-day rule and local rulemaking, and it's going to create horrendous chaos. The bill says that in certain areas, basically areas that are 1.5 million people or more, you cannot anchor in the same spot for more than 30 days in any 6-month period. Now, what that means is, let's say that you go down to, let's say you're anchored in Miami or Miami Beach, for example. Once you have anchored there for more than 30 days, you have to leave the county, or you have to go into a mooring field, or you have to go into a marina. But you cannot stay at anchor for longer than 30 days. Now, there are countless number of people who go down to Florida on their boats, and they spend the entire winter in two locations. For example, HB 41, as I said, is known as the 30-day rules, and it's going to restrict you from anchoring for more than 30 days in any one county, provided that county has more than 1.5 million people in it. Now, that's several of the major areas of Florida. It's Miami Bay, for example. It's Tampa. It's Hillsborough County, Palm Beach County. So, in other words, some of the most popular areas of Florida, you're not going to be able to anchor for more than 30 days. So, if you want to go south and you want to spend your winter in one location for whatever reason, once you hit that 30-day mark, you have to leave the county, or you have to go into a mooring field, or you have to go into an anchorage. Okay. Now, in Miami Beach, for example, there are no designated mooring fields. So, I mean, unless you go to, say, to Dinner Key Marina, which is technically a marina, not one of the anchoring limitation area marinas. Okay. So it may sound reasonable, okay, with this 30-day restriction, but it gets messy. Okay, it includes Miami-Dade, here's my list, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, Hillsborough, and some more. It used to include critical state concern areas, and that was an extremely vague term that could be used to restrict anchoring in large parts of Florida. Now, luckily, they removed that definition in the latest amendment to the bill, but basically it boils down to it's like giving a pig a bath. It's still a pig. What it does, this bill allows local governments to create their own anchoring rules, undoing what would happen in 2006, which was statewide protection that kept anchoring laws consistent across Florida. Now, for any of you who were cruising in Florida back in 2006, i.e. pre-2007, what would happen is you'd come into the state of Florida, and in Fernandina Beach, you could hang out pretty much as long as you wanted. They're pretty casual there. You get down to St. Augustine, and I don't remember anymore, but St. Augustine might have had a week's limitation for being able to stay there. You get down to Fort Lauderdale, and they had an exactly 0 hours limit. You couldn't anchor in Fort Lauderdale at all. You get down to Miami, and I don't know, it was 24, 48, maybe 72 hours. I can't remember now. We're just currently researching the laws from back then. But the bottom line is what it was, you had a complete hodgepodge of rules. Every place you went was a different rule. And that'd be like driving down I-95. And each time you come into a different city, the speed limit on I-95 changes, but they don't put up a sign telling you. So in other words, you're roaring through the city of Melbourne doing 75 miles an hour, which is legal. And then you get into the next county south where they drop the speed limit to 60, and a county mountie pulls you over and hands you a ticket for speeding. You didn't even know you were in the wrong because there's no signs, there's nothing showing you. And it's just ludicrous to have these changes from county to county. So in the years prior to 2007, the major boating organizations, Seven Seas Cruising Association, MTOA, AGLCA, all of them, and some of the major boating associations, the marine industry associations, Boat US, NMMA, and such, all pressured the Florida government to change the law, and they gave us 327.60 subsection 2, subsection F. And what that says is, whoops, we're past that already. Okay, this chapter in chapter 328 do not forbid the adoption of any ordinance, etc., except that a county or municipality may not enact, continue in effect, or enforce on any ordinance or local regulation regarding the anchoring of vessels outside of the boundaries of a mooring field. Okay. In other words, if you wanted to anchor and it wasn't in a mooring field, you were free to anchor, and no local ordinance could stop you from doing so. Now, even now, close to 20 years later, you'll still get cities. Jacksonville, for example, I just called them on the phone today. They're attempting to enact a local ordinance that will affect anchoring. Okay. And I've left a message for their attorney to call me back. And I'm just going to say to her, you're violating state law. You cannot do this. You cannot do this. We had to do this in North Palm Beach a few months ago when they tried to restrict anchoring in the North Lagoon. Some of you remember that. So even though the law says what it says, the communities are still on occasion trying to do this. But this has been our protection. This is what has kept things sane. Senate Bill 481 will change, or House Bill, 481 will change that by allowing local municipalities to enact their own anchoring restrictions. So in other words, Miami Beach, now I can't say this authoritatively, but I would take a bet with anyone here. And I only ever bet for $1 or a beer. So it's not going to cost you a lot of money if you lose. But I would bet that the minute if they pass this, Miami Beach on July the 1st or July the 2nd, I guess, which will be their first day to do it, are going to enact a law saying you cannot anchor anywhere in Miami Beach waters. I guarantee you that's going to happen because that's what they want. That's what they've been working towards. And we're going to get a variety of limits. We're going to have communities like Melbourne or Fort Lauderdale, whatever, who are going to bring back into enforcement the anchoring ordinances that they already have on the books. And it's just going to turn into a mess again. And this is the big problem with 481. We absolutely cannot allow this to happen. Now, in addition to the problems that 481 creates, it also forces boaters into an unsafe condition. Let's say you're anchored at wherever, Palm Beach, for example, and you're waiting for a weather window to go offshore to the Bahamas, or you're doing some repairs. You may be forced to move your boat before it's safe to do so. And you may get into a less than safe anchorage. It also creates, as I said, a legal nightmare for cruisers where different towns will have different anchoring rules. And the rule does not target derelict boats. What it does is it punishes responsible boaters who are following the rules. The bill technically is not about safety or navigation. It's about making life harder for boaters and giving local governments the power to push us around. And I'm telling you, folks, if you're going to get pissed off about anything, this is the one to get pissed off about. We cannot allow this to happen. We fought way too hard back in 2005, 2006 to get this rule in place. Now,
hey, Wally.
Hello, yes.
Yeah, it's Chris. Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So if this bill passes, will this 327.60 revision 2F or whatever that is, I don't have my glasses on, will that bill be taken off of the books?
No, this will amend the bill, allowing counties rather, with over 1.5 million people to enact their own anchoring ordinances.
Okay, so there won't be a conflict of interest as far as active laws. This just says this Florida, the one that you have up right now, is just gone.
It won't be gone. It'll be amended so that any community with population over 1.5, any community with county, with a population over 1.5 million can then make its own laws. So in other words,
which is basically West Palm Beach South.
Basically.
And Jacksonville, maybe St. Augustine.
not St. Augustine. But we'll
Okay.
get to that. There's some more little loopholes coming.
Okay. I wanted to make sure that I'm understanding that process because I'm a respiratory therapist and a boater, and I live on my boat
Yeah.
in one of those counties.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
We know where you are and we know how to find you.
Well, you know where I am.
And we need to get out for rum again soon. Anyhow, so this is the problem with Bill 481 is that it's going to create a mess, an absolute mess. And we absolutely have to defeat that law. There's no question about that whatsoever. Now, Seaport or Senate Bill 594, basically that is what we call the Seaport Bill. When it came into creation, and we knew about it back in August, because one of the commissioners in city commissioners Miami Beach was bragging about it, that it was going to help move people out of his area. So what happened was, basically what the Senate Bill 594 started out with was a bill stating that any seaport could apply and have a 5,000 foot, call it a 1 mile restriction around their seaport put in place. Now, the bill was then amended shortly after that when it became obvious that there was going to be a lot of pushback against 5,000 feet. It got an amendment was put forward to bring it down to 1,500 feet. And then at the committee meeting last week that I attended, the 1,500 feet jumped back up to 2,500 feet. And there's a reason for that. And I'll come into that in a minute. But the bottom line is that this bill will make it impossible to anchor near any seaport that opts into taking this set off. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that every seaport will. They have the option to do so or not. But the problem is the major seaports, Miami, West Palm, probably Key West, and Fort Lauderdale will opt to do this. Now, where the big problem comes in is in Palm Beach. And this bill was referred to me by and I can't say who, because it was a private, a confidential conversation, but somebody very high up in the Ports Commission. What he said to me, this is a Palm Beach bill. The only people who really want this bill is Palm Beach, and the other ports are just saying, yeah, go ahead. We're not going to worry about it. What this bill will do in Palm Beach at 2,500 feet is it will restrict anchoring within that entire area. And that includes, if you know Palm Beach, that, and of course, Chris, you do, that will exclude anchoring around Peanut Island, which is a tourist spot, of course. It will exclude anchoring to the north of Peanut Island. It will exclude anchoring in significant parts to the south of the inlet, where a lot of people anchor now as when they're waiting to go offshore. Now,
yeah, if I can give a little bit better geographics,
because you know,
the Blue Heron Bridge would be included in all of that. So all of the boats around Peanut Island, and about halfway, if you know the area at all, to the Rybovik Super Yacht Club. Right. Now, when it was 5,000 feet, that took it all the way to Rybovik. And, you know, my biggest point of contention with that is, all right, great. I have reported boats that are anchoring illegally already and derelict to Florida Wildlife, Coast Guard, all the municipalities that come in. And I don't want to say they harass me because I'm pleasant to them and they don't harass me. But nothing has happened. So nothing's, I mean, it'll be on the books and they'll harass people and some people will move, but I don't want derelict boats here either, because I want to look out sitting in my cockpit, having my sundowners and not see a boat that's half sunk or sunk, you know? So that's kind of the area that's going to restrict. Now, there'll still be some areas that you might be able to anchor, but they're just going to keep going.
Yeah, that's an important point that Chris has just brought up here. There are laws in the books, and we have been hammering at this with the committees that we've been speaking in front of, myself, Seven Seas Cruising, MTOA, AGLCA, everybody. We've been hammering at them. The laws are in place to deal with these problems. You need to enforce them. But politicians, and I've seen this in my home country of Canada, I've seen it in other countries, the politicians figure we need to be seen to be doing something. Let's make a new law. Well, that's wonderful. You've got a new law in the books, but you know what? You didn't need to do this. You needed to instruct people to enforce the law. And there is actually a way to make that happen. I'm digressing from the original chat that I was going to give, but this is important. If you are in an area where there's in Florida, where there's a derelict boat, and you've advised the FWC or the local law enforcement that boat is there, they have the authority to remove that boat under Florida FWC General Rule 21 on the spot. They can go up to that boat and they can take it out of there right now. No ifs, no ands, no buts. You have to read FWC General Order 21. There are some conditions, but they're not very stringent. Basically, if the boat's a problem, if it's in danger of sinking, if it fulfills any of the derelict categories, they can haul that boat on the spot. But they don't do it. Why? Money, inconvenience. It's not their most important priority. However, we need to make the cities and the law enforcement agencies enforce those laws. And the way to do that, there's a legal procedure. Do we have any lawyers in here who can explain a writ of mandamus better than I can? Okay, that sounds like a big fat no. A writ of mandamus is a court order. You go in front of a court and you say to the court, Your Honor, the Podunk City Police Department is not enforcing the anchoring regulations, and I have reported this vessel as being in violation of the law. Under the law, they're supposed to remove this vessel, and I would like you to put down a writ of mandamus that orders the Podunk City Police Department to remove this boat. The judge then does that. He issues a court order. That's exactly what it is. And that court order will say, City of Podunk Police or City of Podunk Administration, you're hereby ordered to remove the vessel SV falling to pieces by such and such a date. If the city or the police department or whoever the order is directed at fails to do that, they're in contempt of court, and they're not going to do that. That causes them a lot more trouble. We will probably, as a community, as a boating community, need to do this. And the reason we're going to need to do this is because we need to show some of these communities we're serious about getting rid of trouble boats. Chris, you were going to say somebody to say something.
I was, yeah, it was me. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you paused. So in Palm Beach, how do we? Because the city of West Palm Beach owns up to so much distance, and that's high tide line. And then they've sold a bunch of water rights. Royal, I don't need you to help right now. They've sold a bunch of water rights to private entities and whatnot. And so you get in this quagmire of, well, that's not we don't have jurisdiction there. Well, when I go to the county, who also has patrol boats out here that stop people, they say it's not their jurisdiction. So how would you just suggest going to Florida Wildlife? I mean, what do you think is the best single point to contact? Because it's federal water, it's state water, it's Army Corps of Engineer water. It's
Chris,
how do we?
I'm not laughing at you. I get it.
Hey, Chris, this is David. Can I add something?
Sure.
Yes, please.
There's a boat. There's a Catalina near us.
David,
that
where you at?
I'm in Lake Worth. I'm near Chris.
Okay, thank you.
There's a boat that was literally on the verge of sinking. It is already red tagged by FWC. I went and recorded the incident number from the FWC red tag that's on both sides of the vessel, and I called them 3 times and I said, this boat is sinking. It was literally down by the bow, sinking, and they did nothing.
Right, and that's the problem. I mean,
they did nothing. Eventually, one of the local guys who manages some of the moorings and stuff around here, Zach Staggs, he went and pumped it out because it was on one of his moorings, and he's been fighting with the guy who owns the boat to come and take it away, and because he hasn't been paid either. So I mean, the laws are there, but like you said earlier, they just don't enforce them.
I'm going to segue again. I'm getting dragged away from what I want to talk about, but that's good.
I know, we're sorry.
No, don't be, because we're covering stuff that is important to cover. One of the things I did, as most of you know, is I wrote a white paper called Anchoring a Solution. And David, I addressed exactly what you talked about, because the same thing happened to me in Stewart. I'm sitting there at anchor in Manatee Pocket, and the boat behind me, which was, in fact, it could have been the same damn Catalina for all I know, but it was about a 20.
Hey, no, I don't have anything against Catalinas. I'm on one.
But the thing was, whatever the boat was, I watched it sinking. So I called the sheriff's department. I called the FWC. Nobody came out, and the next day it was on the bottom. It turns out the owner was in Germany. This was the second time the boat had sunk. But the laws are written in a way that the cops can't go on board and pump it out. They don't have the authority. They can't call Boat US and say, send a boat over there, pump it out and tow it off and get it hauled onto the land. The law has to change. And I addressed this issue in my white paper. Now, for anybody who wants to read the white paper, I try to keep it reasonably entertainment. If you go to crnna.com and click on that link, you'll see something called white paper download. Just go to that, click on it, and then read it through, and you'll see some suggestions.
Could you post a link to that on the Facebook group?
I can do that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, let me just make a note here. Link. Hopefully that one word will remind me of what I want. So yeah, and that is a problem. But the thing is, the laws are there. The money's not been provided. For example, the FWC doesn't want to take its little pot of money and remove this boat, because that means that's money that they don't have to do something else. The city of Palm Beach, for example, or town of Palm Beach, I should say, maybe doesn't want to spend the money to do that because that's money they want to spend somewhere else. So everybody's avoiding their responsibilities because they don't.
But FWC's budget and the town of Palm Beach budget are two totally separate things.
Of course, but they don't want. Neither one of them wants to spend their budget on stuff like this.
Well, FWC, that is their mandate.
So I
Amongst
guess,
other things.
David,
yeah, I guess my
forgive me.
question, Wally.
What makes you think they care?
Well, they keep on bringing up all these stupid bills.
I agree, because that's what the politicians do to make themselves seem relevant. Let me go on, because there's a lot more to Palm Beach.
Okay,
than
yes.
What you
Okay, yep. Sorry, we won't hijack your podcast. We're out.
This is what I wanted. I want discussion. I want conversation. So anybody who needs to jump in and say something, I mean, no problem. Anyway, what's happening in Palm Beach is a little more hidden, and I wrote about this and posted a Substack on it. Okay, the person who sponsored Senate Bill 594 is Senator Ana Rodriguez from down Miami way. Now, Senator Rodriguez has posted this bill, which basically would, let me segue back a bit. The city of Riviera Beach wants to build a mooring field just north of the Blue Heron Bridge. That mooring field is actually going to be in what Palm Beach considers to be its waters. Palm Beach has objected to this. Now, what's going to happen here is Palm Beach has hired a lawyer called, Ted, you're here. What was the name of the firm, the law firm?
They should be working together, damn it.
Hang on, I'm coming there. Okay, I can't remember the name of the law firm. Call him Screw 'em LLP. That's as good a name for a law firm as any. So the town of Palm Beach has hired Screw 'em LLP to work on their behalf against the mooring field that Riviera Beach wants. An employee, a lobbyist who works for Screw 'em LLP, is the port representative, the lobbyist for the Port of Palm Beach. Now, with just that little bit of information, who would like to tell me who the biggest donor this bill sponsor, Senator Rodriguez, is? Who is her biggest donor of those people I mentioned? The law firm Screw 'em LLP. Okay, and this means that there's a conflict of interest going on. There's a violation of bar ethics. There's a conflict of interest. There's a pay-to-play scam going on from the sound of it. I'm actually looking to be talking sometime the next day or two to the senator for or the House representative, I should say more properly. I expect to be talking the next couple of days to the House representative for Palm Beach, and she and I will be talking about why she did not take this bill on. But the bottom line is that there's some hanky panky going on, in my opinion, because if this bill passes, then Senator Rodriguez, the Senator Rodriguez donor, the law firm, gets a win for the city of Palm Beach. They get a win, okay? And I'm sorry, but it's not supposed to work that way. This is dishonest. It's conflict of interest. It's all those ugly things that politicians tell us they never do. So it's a little more complex, David, than what you realized.
No, I get it.
Okay, no, but I'm just saying that this is going on in the background. Now, I have demanded of Senator Rodriguez that she answer my questions in print, via email. And she answered the first round of questions, but the minute I started hammering in on the difficult stuff, radio silence. And believe me, I'm not through with that lady yet. I mean, I'm sure she's a perfectly wonderful person, but you don't play these kinds of things and expect to get away with them. So,
and I believe the law firm is Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe.
That would be
name him and shame him.
You know what? I wish I could remember the name. It's Alzheimer's or Alzheimer's or Anyway, not
Yeah.
that it matters. I've got it written down somewhere, and for our purposes, any name is good. Dewey Cheatham and Howe is perfectly good. So basically, that's what's going on with Senate Bill 594. Now, I am also going to be making an application to the committees, probably the Senate Fiscal Committee, to do a formal presentation, because the way it works now, if I show up in Tallahassee like anybody else, I have 2 to 3 minutes to say my piece. I don't have a chance
You
to.
did a good job the other night, by the way.
Thank you very much. I don't get a chance to ask questions. I don't get a chance to outline things properly. The senators, God bless them, and the House representatives, they're not voters. There's only a couple of them who are actually voters. They don't understand what these bills actually do. And what I want to do is I want to do a formal presentation and explain exactly why these bills are bad. I want to give them a professional voters understanding of the problems, which they're not getting from anybody else, of course. And hopefully they'll agree to that. And if they do, we can hopefully we can hopefully get them to understand that these bills are bad bills and back down on them. But
Hey, Wally,
yes, Chris.
if you actually get that time frame, please let people know,
Oh, absolutely.
especially
Absolutely.
me, because I will. I'm kind of sick today, so I'm not retired. I work full time, but I might be sick that day because I will drive to Tallahassee and stand in support and give my own testimony.
Excellent. And that would be supremely welcome. We need a lot more of that. So anyway, moving on about Senate 594. This is the problem. Senate 594 is not a bill designed to deal with derelicts or anything else. Senate Bill 594 is strictly a backdoor play to eliminate Riviera Beach's anchoring mooring field. That's all it is. That's all it ever was. And that's how I intend. I'm sure that the other organizations, SSCA, MTOA, AGLCA, and them are not going to approach it the same way I am, but I'm also not the same kind of person they are. I call a spade, and I hit somebody in the back of the head with it to make them understand. They don't like to play the game that way, and I deal with politicians who I used to deal with them when I was a professional journalist. Okay, I have no respect for most of them because they don't deserve respect, and a lot of people object to that approach to them, including the politicians. But that's sometimes how it's got to be. They're playing dirty. We've got to go back in and deal with that sort of thing ourselves. I have also, while I'm thinking of it, I've contacted the Coast Guard, and I think I said this earlier, but I'm going to repeat it to be on the safe side. I've contacted the Coast Guard, and I've said to them, to the commander of the Coast Guard, no less, this bill violates or infringes rather on federal authority and federal legislation that you guys deal with, and this bill has not been vetted by the sponsor. You guys need to get involved and deal with this before it starts screwing up how you run the show, because ultimately in a seaport, it is the Coast Guard that's responsible for security. It's responsible for anchoring. It's responsible for all of these things. With that in mind, I've also asked the bill sponsor, Senator Rodriguez, for chapter and verse on any incidents or accidents or anything like of that nature that happened. I've had no response on that. I've had nothing from her about the stuff that needs to be known for this bill to proceed. So I'm hammering as hard as I can. And I'll be honest, the more emails, the more phone calls these people get, the more they get the message that there's something wrong here. So
Wally,
yes.
real quick, I'm sorry.
No problem.
You send out a lot of this stuff on the Facebook pages and stuff like that.
Yes.
And my question, and for this group, and so that we can pass it along to everybody else, is a lot of very valid things are presented in each of those emails. If we are just copying and pasting the same email every time, and they're getting just a Memorex copy of the same email, does that have as much influence as a somewhat tailored message from that person?
No, if you can tailor it, if you can make it a little bit different, it forces them to read it. Like if they go to the first sentence and it says A, B, C, D, E, and then the next one is A, B, C, D, E, then they're just going to blow it off. They'll count it. They'll know it's there. But it doesn't take a lot of effort to copy and paste and throw something out. If you change it even a little bit, especially the first couple paragraphs, it's going to get read. It's going to get noticed. It's going to get some attention paid to it. So that's,
okay.
and
ChatGPT is your friend.
Yeah. So
yes,
maybe
ChatGPT is your friend. Exactly.
Well, no, I don't like Terminator either. But so just maybe letting people know that, like, just don't copy and paste this, because they're gonna give like, oh, I've seen it, seen it, seen it, seen it, seen it, seen it. And that was my question. And I try to go through and make each one of them a little bit personal to me, like, what I do. I'm not derelict. I have a full-time job. I work, I have legal access to land, which is amazing in West Palm Beach. Sorry for my cursing because it's recorded.
I'll bleep it.
Thank you. And so just to make people understand that just copying and pasting what you see, and and a lot of the stuff you write or a lot of stuff that's been posted about this is fantastic. It hits every point, but they're not going to take it the same way. Like you said, if they read the first 3 lines, they're like, I've read, dang, this one again. So,
yeah. Now, the other thing that's really important, if you can pick up the phone and call the Tallahassee office, even if you leave a message saying, my name is Wally Moran, I'm very concerned about House Bill 481 or Senate Bill 594. I'm a constituent of the senator or the House representative. And if you are, that's really good. And just say, I would like a phone call back to discuss this, and then give your number. When you do that, it really hits home, because then they have to take time out of their day to actually phone you, because it's their obligation, because you're a constituent. You have to be contacted. Okay. You have a vote, and they like that. So they want to protect that. So if you can pick up the phone and make a phone call, that is huge. Like, emails are great. Phone calls are like 1,000 times. When I was in the newspaper business years ago, and before the internet, we used to have the politicians used to tell me, if we get a letter from somebody, we figured that letter represents another 10 people who couldn't be bothered writing. We figure that one letter is worth 10 votes. In the day of the internet, that one email is worth like 100 votes. So it means a lot. And it's important that people follow this stuff through. Okay, so to wrap up Senate Bill 594. Okay, let's see if I can make that thing. There we go. Okay. Federal law already regulates anchoring near ports. The bill's not needed to regulate any anchoring. And on top of that, when the minute this bill starts talking about depths of 8 and 10 feet instead of the 35 to 40 feet that seagoing boats, ships need, they're clearly out of their territory. It also blocks access to key safe anchorages that a lot of cruisers use for overnight stops. I mean, how many people anchor in Palm Beach, planning to head out in the first clear weather window for West End? Lots of us. Or how many people stop there because they've just come back and they need a rest? So these seaport anchorages are vitally important anchorages for cruisers. There's also no evidence, as I said earlier, that anchored boats that are near ports cause safety or environmental issues of any kind. So that's something to remember. Okay, when you're talking to the politicians, those are key points. So Senate Bill 164 is kind of the only one that's not a major problem. Thank God for that. But it's still a problem for one reason. What it does 2 things. It sets new definitions for certain terms, such as who the legal owner of a boat is. You'd have to read it because it gets into a lot of legalese. But it sets new definitions for that sort of thing. It sets a new definition for what long-term anchoring is. And it sets that at 2 weeks. And I find that problematical, and I'll come back to that in a minute. The other thing it does is that it states that you must leave an area after 2 weeks. Okay. In other words, if you've been anchored in an area for 2 weeks, you can't stay there, you got to go. That's problematical because, of course, if you're waiting for a weather window, if you're waiting for a mooring ball in St. Augustine's or Vero Beach or Marathon Boot Key Harbor, very often you're going to be waiting 3, 4, 5 weeks. I'm sure some of you have done that. If you're planning on going offshore to the Bahamas, you could easily get stuck in Miami or West Palm or any of these locations for 3, 4, 5 weeks before the weather clears up enough that you can safely cross. Now, the bill is relatively anodyne in that it says when you get to 2 weeks, you can go online and you can apply for a permit. Okay, but why do we need to do this? Okay, it's going to take a lot of law enforcement time and effort to make this law work. Okay, and the FWC and the sheriffs, they've got a lot more important things to do than going by decent voters like you people and saying, hey, let's see your permit. Okay, you've been here for 2 weeks. Now, not only that, but in order to take you to court, they've got to do things like they've got to say, okay, sailing vessel Baby Doll was there on the 14th. Sailing vessel Baby Doll was there. And they have to track that boat day after day for 14 days before they can give you a ticket. Okay. And I had this discussion with the FWC last week when they were reading my white paper, Anchoring a Solution. And what the gentleman I spoke to asked was, what do you consider to be appropriate for long-term anchoring? And the FWC seems to be looking at a 3-week period. And what he said was, if it's 3 weeks, he said, the likelihood is it'll go to 45 days before a police officer takes any action. And I understand that. I'd like to see it to be a month at a minimum. And during hurricane period, I'd rather see that reduced to 2 weeks. But those are things that can be negotiated down the road. But the thing is, we don't need this happening. Now, the other parts of the bill, having a boat identify itself, being able to name the owner when you get a case of a derelict boat where they can't move it because they can't find the owner, these are all good things. If they just took out the 2-week restriction, I'd be more than happy with that bill. But the other problems with it, the 2-week aspect doesn't account for weather delays or mooring wait lists, mooring field wait lists, or marina wait lists. It creates, as I said, an enforcement nightmare, because how does the sheriff or FWC know when you have a permit or not? What it is basically, it's another unnecessary restriction on responsible boaters, and it fails to actually address the derelict boat situation. It's bureaucracy for the sake of bureaucracy, and it's only going to make life harder for those of us who are already following the rules. Now, who is really behind these bills? In other words, who's pushing these restrictions? One of those groups that's doing this is the city of Miami Beach. They are seeking to bar any anchoring whatsoever in the waters of Miami Beach. Now, the problem is, in their waters, there are somewhere between 250 and 300 boats. Same as in West Palm Beach, or Palm Beach rather. If one of these bills passes, for example, if Senate Bill 594 passes, where are those 250 to 300 boats going to go? Okay, most of you probably know that area of the ICW reasonably well. They can't go further north. They can't go further south. There are no anchorages available. So let's say, for example, the rule passes, Senate 594 passes. All of a sudden, you have 250 boats, and they're going to be looking at places like Melbourne. And I can guarantee you, House Representative Debbie Mayfield is already looking at this with a lot of concern. Okay, she doesn't want to see this pass because those boats are going to end up in her backyard, and her constituents are going to be unhappy about it. The point is, before they can start displacing boats, they have got to have a plan to where these boats are going to go. It's musical chairs, and it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And it's foolish to think it will. So the city of Miami Beach is one of the organizations that's pushing these bills. And that's evident in the fact that the two main bills that are being sponsored are House Representative Vicky Lopez and Senator Rodriguez. Okay, they're both Miami and Miami Beach senators and representatives. So that's where the pressure is coming from, is largely from Miami Beach. Some of it may also be coming from some fairly well-off homeowners in Palm Beach who are tired of having boats anchored outside their homes. The problem is as usual, the pressure is coming from wealthy shoreside homeowners. Now, and you've heard me say this before, but I'm going to repeat it so for anybody who's new here, they'll get it. These people don't own the waterway. Florida's waterways belong to everybody. Florida already has got laws, and the laws they've got the propulsion test, where a vessel has to be able to prove that it can move such and such a distance in a proper amount of time, excuse me, and return, and it can do that under either power or sail. So as long as it's mobile, it's considered a boat of navigation, and it passes that test. You've got the vessel turn-in program, where if a vessel gets tagged by the FWC or a law enforcement officer, the owner of that vessel can turn it in at no charge to the FWC, and the FWC will remove that boat. You have the at-risk vessel program, and what that does is the state will tag a vessel and say, Mr. Jones, your boat has got such and such wrong with it. You have to correct this, whether it's a motor non-functioning so the boat can't pass a propulsion test, whether it's got open portholes, whether it's got whatever the case may be. There's a whole series of things that can be looked at. If it won't pass those, it has to pass those, or the boat can be removed from the water. And again, this stuff all comes down to enforcement. Once they say that a boat's got to be removed, they have to remove it. They can't just sit there with a red tag on it until the next hurricane sinks it. The other bill that they have, and I mentioned this a bit earlier, is FWC General Order 21. That bill completely obviates the need for Senate Bill 594 and largely 164. Okay. If these people want a boat gone, the laws are in place to move that boat today. Basically, the bills are about pushing boaters out of sight and out of mind. And we just can't allow this to happen. These bills, if strictly enforced, would eliminate overnight anchoring in Florida almost entirely. Now, the economic impact, and this is good to know when you're writing senators and House representatives, the marine industry contributes over $23 billion to Florida's economy, okay? If any of these bills passes, a lot of boaters are going to say, screw that, I'm going to go offshore, I'm going to just bypass Florida entirely and go straight offshore to the Bahamas. Now, the problem is, and we all know this, especially the new boaters, they're not comfortable doing that. They want to sit and wait for that perfect weather window to cross the Bahamas, and they need to come into Florida. So it's going to be a problem no matter which way it goes. Local waterfront industries and businesses, of course, they depend on transient boaters to spend money. The economic impact there is going to be fairly significant. And as I said, if anchoring becomes too difficult, boaters are simply going to bypass Florida. I saw a note on a YouTube video a while back, and the guy just said, I've got a such and such trawler, don't remember the name, but he says, I've got 3,000 gallons on board. If I don't have to stay in Florida, I'm just going to blow it off. I'm going to go straight out. And he's got the tankage to do that. And he won't be the only one who does. And let's face it, a guy who's got a boat that holds 3,000 gallons of fuel, this is a guy that's going to spend some money. Florida wants those boaters, and those are exactly the ones that they're driving away. Now, what can you personally do to stop this? Okay. Number one, contact your Florida legislatures. Whether you live in Florida or not, contact the legislators and let them know, if you don't live in Florida, hey, I am a boater and I'm going to be coming to Florida. If you do these, I'm going to change my plans. I'm not going to go to Florida. Let them know that their actions are affecting their boating tourism business. That is important to them. Tell them to vote no on House Bill 481, Senate Bill 594, and Senate Bill 164. If you don't already belong to an advocacy group, whether it's my group, the Cruising Rights Network of North America, which membership is free, by the way, or the Boat US or Seven Seas Cruising Association, or the AGLCA or MTOA, join one of those groups. Let it be known to them that you are joining strictly and mainly to fight the anchoring limitations in Florida. Okay, they all have separate pots of money for these sorts of things. And by the way,
Hey, Wally,
yeah,
the Great Loopers also have some people running down around that place too.
yes, the American Great Loopers Association. And if you join one of these organizations, tell them I sent you. Okay, I would really appreciate that. Because of how I push politicians around, they don't like my style. So I mean, if
You're a dick.
what can I say?
You're not. I'm
No,
joking.
It's no, I don't. Having spent my life as a journalist and interviewed all kinds of politicians, I don't put up with their bullshit. And
No, I understand. I'm just having fun with you, Wally.
I know you are, Chris. But the problem is, everybody else doing this are professional litigators or professional lobbyists, and they have their ways of doing this. And it's we're going to be nice. We're going to say nice things to the politicians. No, it's not how journalists work. And I'm too old to change my ways for that. I call it the way I see it. If they don't like it, the hell with them. So anyway, so if you join one of these other organizations, please tell them I sent you. The other thing is, spread the word. Share the podcast. Talk to fellow boaters. Make as much noise as you can, because the rule about the squeaky wheel, it absolutely applies. Okay. If we don't fight these laws, we're just going to keep losing. And and I hate to say this, but we have been losing for years. Once we got 2007 in place, we were fine up until 2016. That's when the Boating Association, the Boating Coalition, as they call themselves, let 327.4108, which is the anchoring limitation area law, pass. That bill, I told them at the time, and this is what really ticked them off about me. I told them at the time, this bill is going to come back and it's going to bite us. And it is now biting us really badly because some of these bills are based on ALAs and things like that. And they're strictly, let's say they reduce ALAs to 30 days, which they're now trying to do. At 30 days, there are going to be hundreds upon hundreds of boats in every county of Florida that have to move somewhere else. And there's no place else for those boats to go. It's not realistic. Things have to change. And as I said earlier, my white paper outlines how things can change to make it work. But these people have got to get the message that what they're doing now isn't working because they're not listening to people like you and I who are boaters who are actually on the water. Okay, that's pretty much all I have to say. My throat's getting sore. I'm almost out of wine because I've been sipping on wine to keep my throat lubricated. Questions, folks?
I'll give you a second to go refill your wine.
No, I've got left for a couple sips. I'm good.
Okay. So, building upon what you just said, these laws are not going to affect the derelict boats, which is pretty obvious.
Not at all.
Anybody that's here.
Yeah.
It's going to affect me. It's going to affect David. It's going to affect the other dozen people that are on here.
Yep.
Hopefully, maybe not. I really wish there were more people on here. I'm sorry.
Well, a lot of people are going to review this. They're going to view the recording later when I put it online.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I mean, I've got in David and I's view, there are, David, what do you say? 40, 50 boats that have not moved in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, and so, yes, I now have to jump through multiple hoops to move from here out of county, which is not horribly, but now I got to find a place to put my car because I work full time and I pay for my legal dockage and legal land access and all of that. So, it's not going to do anything to affect all these people that are leaving all these boats derelict throughout the state.
They'll
And
just
like
leave
you
them
said,
anyway.
They're just going to leave them because they don't want them. They want them to be taken care of by the federal government or by the state government or by the city or by the county. They don't care. They're done with them. Great grandpa was an avid sailor. He died 20 years ago. I don't know what to do with this thing. So how do we get past that part?
Okay.
I think Wally's point earlier about the writ of mandamus is
That's a good start.
I'd actually looked
So
at
do
something
we-
like that not that long ago, but I just didn't know how to pursue it.
So do
and
we
I also didn't have
call-
the resources to pursue it because it's going to cost money.
No, you can do I don't know. I haven't looked. I'm
Well-
just speaking. I have a bird on my shoulder.
We need
But I mean,
Um,
we need to get if it's possible to get FWC and West Palm Police. Obviously, I'm talking about around here, but but let's just take West Palm for now. If we can get West Palm Beach Police and FWC to actually enforce the laws and get rid of the derelicts that have been, many of which have been tagged already or they've been tagged multiple times. People take the tags off and just ignore and leave them there. We've got 3 derelicts that were intentionally moored in the Palm Beach Sailing
in that channel.
channel just to piss us off, and the FWC has never done a damn thing about it.
So
Um,
I guess so Wally and or anybody that's still here and has some legal knowledge, I can make you breathe if you stop. I don't know anything about the rest of it.
Which way? If somebody has the time to find out what a writ of mandamus is what it's going to take to get a writ of mandamus against FWC and any other relevant parties, and how much is it going to cost, I would certainly be prepared to chip in some bucks to make that happen. But other than using ChatGPT to write a writ of mandamus, I'd be the blind leading the blind.
I actually have access to a lawyer, and I think what we need to do with that is we need to do a test case somewhere. Palm Beach is probably as good as any place else, but we can talk about that down the road. I'm
Okay.
going to back up a little bit. I mentioned the white paper that I did, and I mentioned that I've figured out a plan that works. I'm going to explain that a little bit. It's called zoned management. Now, the idea behind zone management, the problem with the anchoring laws that have been brought out over time is that the all of the solutions that the legislature has brought out address one group or address another group. Okay, like they say, so they're saying we'll deal with derelicts, or we'll help the transients out, or we'll deal with transients. The problem here is that if you don't look at all the groups, all the boaters in the state of Florida, you're never going to get it right. Now, for the purposes of zone management, I've basically decided that there are three groups. You have liveaboards, you have wet storage, and you have transients. Now, the transient boaters, people like myself, who just travel through an area, we're here for a few weeks, maybe a couple months at the outside, then we move on to the next area, bump, 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 okay? We're not an issue. But, and then you have the liveaboards, people like Chris who have jobs, who live in an area, who have commitments, etc., whether it's a job or whether they're staying for healthcare, whatever. Okay. Now, amongst the liveaboards, we have semi-respectable types, or respectable types, excuse me, like Chris. And then we have, you know, I was going to get back at you.
Thank you.
And then we have,
Don't call me respectable.
and then, yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize. And then we have the squatter groups. Okay, we have the questionable types. We have the welfare types. We have the druggies, the people with mental health issues. Okay, that's a reality in life, and that's a subgroup, and I address them as well. But we'll leave that for the moment. And then we have wet storage. Okay, now if you set up in any given area, if you set up 3 areas, each for each one. For example, you have an area for liveaboards on a mooring field. Okay, and those liveaboards can choose to stay on a mooring ball, and people who are transient can stay on some of those mooring balls as well. So it'd be like St. Augustine, for example. Okay, you have a community of people who live there, and then you have some transients who come and go. And then you have an area set up for people who would rather anchor, and you'll have liveaboard anchors there, but they have to be liveaboard. And then you have transients who anchor there, and they come and go. And then you have, and this is where we get to the core of the problem, you have the wet stored boats. Any vessel that is going to be wet stored for longer than, say, 3 weeks, 1 month, whatever the number ends up being, those boats must be on a mooring ball. Must. No ifs, no ands, no buts. And the reason for that is that on a mooring ball, they can be policed. So, for example, if your boat's going to go on a mooring ball because you're wet storing it long term, then what happens is your boat has got to have a properly functioning bilge pump. It's got to have a way to keep that bilge pump charged and running so that it will keep pumping. It's got to have proper lines to tie off to the mooring ball. Okay, it's got to have all these things and more than that, obviously, that have been set up and have been examined by a harbor master who says your boat is okay. And then that boat, it gets to stay on that mooring ball. Now, if somebody is so broke that they can't really afford a mooring ball,
What's a harbor master? There's no
No.
such thing here in West Palm.
I know.
Hold on, David. I was going to get there. Let him finish.
Okay, you're right. There are harbor masters up north. I think we need them in Florida. I really do. So you have a harbor master who takes care of these fields in the major areas. But each one of these fields, whether it's a mooring field for long-term and transient, an anchorage area for long-term and transient, or a wet storage area for non-liveaboard boats, you've segregated the boats into areas that you can easily manage. Okay, so let's say, for example, because most of your problems come from wet stored boats. Let's say you have a wet stored boat that's starting to have problems. The bilge pump starts to fail. It starts to go down. The law needs to be changed. If that boat's in the mooring field, the mooring field, the harbor master has the authority to call Boat US, Seato, or go out himself with a pump that boat out, take it off the mooring ball if that's what needed to be, and get the boat put on land. Total authority. The law has to be changed to allow that. If it's not,
So, Wally, can I stop you just for half a second on that
no problem.
specific note? And I don't know how many people are listening. It could just be you, me, and David by now.
We haven't lost anybody.
Okay. So here in West Palm, there are legal mooring. Well, in theory, you can get a legal mooring,
Yes.
but you have to go through at least 3 different federal government agencies:
DEP,
state, federal, and local.
Yep.
And the mooring I'm on, and please bleep this, it's not a legal mooring. None of these are legal moorings. So I would actually like a legal mooring field. My daughter is in St. Augustine at the city marina. They provide taxi service. They provide pump out. They provide, shh, stop. You don't need to do that. Sorry. They provide all the sources that the community here is arguing against us, and most of us agree with that. I don't like looking at derelict boats. I have a composting head, so I don't have to go to pump out. But I don't like the idea of people pumping out things overboard at night when you can't see it. I don't like that there's sunken boats or half sunken boats, or at every single high blow wind event, I got to be on my deck with my spotlight to be able to fend off stuff that broke off anchor.
Yep.
So, I mean, how do we can we align with the property owners in some way? Because we definitely all want the same thing. And if we could get their backing, is that? It's not.
Chris,
I
I
know.
wish we could do that. But the bottom line is, when you own a $80 million property like Sylvester Stallone does, you don't want anybody in your view. You want them gone, and that's the problem.
No, actually, they don't. I actually tend to disagree just a little bit. I think they actually want the sailboats and the boats that don't have shit hanging all over them. They want that picturesque ocean view of a few sailboats here and there that are properly maintained. Their sails not blown out. It's not been hanging out since the last hurricane because the halyard snapped. I mean, I don't like seeing those either. I think if we could think of a way to somehow realign, I don't like any of these bits. I don't want you to think that's where I'm going with this. But how could we potentially realign with that? Because I wish you remember who it was, but I think it's Warren Buffett. There's one of these big ass millionaires. Every time he comes down to West Palm, he anchors his boat just south of me because he doesn't like to be in his mansion on Palm Beach. He prefers to be on his boat, and they run his dog.
Warren,
I think one of those types. I don't remember which. I will figure it out and I will send it to you.
Please, I love the thought of that.
But they take his dog to shore 3 times a day, and anytime he's in Florida, his boat's literally a half mile south of me.
Oh wow!
Because he wants to be in the intercoastal, not in his house.
Cool. Yeah, I'm just so bemused to hear that. I think that's a local thing, Chris. I think every group of boaters has to form a community and try and forge bonds at the local level. Joining organizations, joining committees, attending city hall hearings, being a part of the community. I think is really what it boils down to. I mean, let's face it. A lot of these people are boaters themselves, they're just not boaters at the level that we are boaters. Okay, if indeed you assign levels to it. So that I think is a big part of it.
One other thing you might want to maybe tap into here for me and for at least two boaters I know personally are veterans with disabilities.
Okay, let me take it from there, Chris. I actually spend a full page in the white paper specifically addressing that issue. And amongst the liveaboards, once we get away from people like you, we run into people who are a little more problematical. We run into people who are have alcohol and drug problems. We have people with mental issues, and we have veterans who are struggling with things like PTSD. And then we have people who are just plain broke and cannot afford to live, and they're living on a boat because it beats living in a cardboard box under a bridge.
Don't forget that there are some real assholes out there too.
Oh yeah, and there are. I agree. Okay, and for them we have no mercy. But the bottom line is, for these other groups of people, we have to understand these people are not a boating problem. There are organizations. For example, I'm going to name one, and it may be inaccurate, but Tunnels to Towers comes to mind. Okay, organizations like that have got the resources and the understanding of these marginalized groups. But we have these marginalized groups, people who don't function well in society for whatever reason. Okay, these groups can go in and they can deal with these people, but we cannot continue to treat these people and their boats as a boating problem. They're a social welfare problem.
Well, no, I actually I agree and disagree. I mean, their boats are still a problem
They are.
because they create the kind of environment that spurs all of these bills.
I agree. And that is, and we have to deal with that. But the way to deal with that is not by looking at it as a boating problem, but by looking at the person on board that boat. If we can remove those people from their boats, okay, if we can take some guy who's hooked on meth and is living on a boat because he got thrown out of his last apartment because he blew all his rent money on meth, okay? If we can take that guy and get him into a program, get him into subsidized housing on shore, that problem's gone. That boat's gone. Problem over with. And if we can deal with that group of people, the poor, the indigent poor, the substance abusers, and the seriously mentally ill,
Yeah.
probably remove
Uh,
80% of our problems. And then if we can deal with the veterans, those
Well,
who live ashore,
the
great.
boats are still there because they don't do anything about it.
Well,
But
that's part of the solution.
my point is, most veterans
yes.
do not fall in that category.
No, I agree.
They
I
are
know
just
that.
done with people, and they found a way. I live in West Palm Beach, cheaper than anybody that looks at me.
And I agree.
And
Veterans are a separate category and they have to be treated that way. Some of them are living on a boat because they're struggling with PTSD or whatever, or they're flat broke. If they
well,
want
it's mostly if it's PTSD, they are living on a boat because they control all the stimulus.
I understand that. But the point is there are military organizations that can deal with that for them. Now, in terms
There's
of
not a but here's the deal. You don't have to deal with it. They're not doing anything, and I'm arguing the point for you.
I know.
We're not doing anything illegal by living on the boat, following the
but
regulations.
If their boat is a bum boat, if it's a piece of trash, not that that happens all the time, but it does happen with veterans sometimes. You know, they've lost the willingness to live like to live properly. Okay. There are military organizations that can go in there and say, okay, we're going to get you a proper anchor. We're going to get you a proper this, that, and the other thing. We're going to get your boat all ship shape so you live properly on this boat. That's a whole other effort from what we're doing, but it's something that can and should be done. And you don't know this, but back home in Canada, I'm known as a huge supporter of veterans. I've received awards for my articles and write-ups. This needs to be done so that if these guys choose to live in a boat, the boat is respectable and acceptable. And if they don't want to live in a boat, but they're living in a boat because that's the only way they can get away from their demons, then let's help them as necessary. You know, it's a separate category. And for the troublemakers, the ones who just don't give a damn about society and want to piss over their side in front of the neighbors, let's get them off their boats. Let's use the full strength of the law, the propulsion tests, the at-risk vessel test, everything. Let's use it all. Let's get them off the water because we don't need them anymore. And that's a significant change from what I was saying 10 years ago.
I absolutely agree. My daughter actually just had an issue with her propulsion test in St. Augustine. Her thermostat failed and she had to come off her ball. And we're like, damn it. So we went all through the troubleshooting, but they're like, yeah, you can't come back right now. So, you know, those aren't fail proof, but yes, I agree. So I will give back the presentation to you. Thank you so much for everything you're doing right now.
Hey, it's important. It needs to be done. And it's my way of paying back for all the good stuff that people have done for me. Do we have any more questions here? It's starting to run. We're running into almost an hour and a quarter now. Questions? Going once? Going twice? 3 times. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you, Wally.
Your questions have been great. You've given me some ideas, and we'll talk to you all again. If you need to get in touch,
Wally.
if you have any great ideas, give me a shout.
Thank you, Wally.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wally.
Thanks, Wally.
And perfectly timed. I just ran out of wine. Hey, Kate. Good night. Hey, Hazel. Good night, Hazel.
At least you have your priorities straight.
Okay. Good night, all. Ted.
Good night.
See y'all again. Okay. Where's the off button here?